That's great. I guess we go to the next slide.
So how might company benefit from using a letter of credit? Peace of mind. I mean, open account, you're worried, cash in advance, is very difficult on the buyers a lot of time. And when you're using a letter of credit, we're relying on the relationship and the credit level and the reputation of your bank and the foreign bank. So every bank has a credit rating, so we're moving that risk up to the bank levels and reducing that risk to you from a shipper and a importer. And then building relationships. A lot of people will start out with letters of credit and then eventually maybe move to cash against documents, which is sort of like letters of credit light, and then perhaps go to open account later on. So we can flip to the next slide that we have, and that's talking about the scale of payment terms and the risks that are involved. So you'll see on this scale that it says what's the least amount of risk to an exporter, what's the least amount of risk to an importer. So for an exporter, it's, of course, cash in advance is the best way to go that they would like to see us. We hear a lot of CFOs say, if we want to do exports, I want cash in advance and I want US dollars. But that's the best case scenario, but a lot of times maybe you can't get that. And if you're talking to some of the export salespeople that need to make their numbers and get their sales growth, if you're looking at an opportunity to use a letter of credit that's a guaranteed payment and you can give terms, that might be an option. So cash in advance first is the best one for the shipper, then a letter of credit, and then the next one would be cash against documents or, what's a documentary collection is another way people say that, or letter of credit light means you still have the banks transfer the information, transfer the documents, and transfer payment. We're just not checking all of the documents to make sure everything is perfect. So it's sort of like a letter of credit, but it can go faster if it works properly, and it can be less expensive. Now, at this point, I should mention something about letters of credit. The overall transaction that banks are taking care of is we're guaranteeing payment under the letter of credit, that the documents provided are accurate. We have nothing to do with the sales contract between the buyer and the seller. If the buyer says he's buying a container load full of widgets and he gets half a container load, that has nothing to do with the payment process. That would have to happen between the buyer and seller discussion outside of the LC.
So it's best to think of those in two separate departments. The documents are between you and the other bank, and the freight is between the buyer and the seller.
Right. This is guaranteed payment transaction. That's a transaction of sale. So the International Chamber of Commerce authenticates and creates documents that we follow. For example, letters of credit are the procedure we follow is UCP 600. So it's Uniform Customs and Practices put out by the International Chamber of Commerce of UCP 600. And then Incoterms, International Chambers of Commerce, International Commercial Terms of Sale, are also organized by them and put out under Incoterms 2010. But as we were talking about the scale of risk, you do letter of credit, then letter of credit light or documentary collections, and then open account. So one factor is better for importers and one is better for others.